Comic books are unique in the way they accumulate their mythology. Their ongoing narrative not only extends through decades, but through generations. They are exposed to the evolving whims of our culture. Different morals, norms, trends, and causes get picked up and dropped by different generations, but for our ageless heroes, these fluctuations in culture become scraps in the collage. They grow as we, the people, grow, and if studied with a wide enough lens, these characters reveal themselves to be time capsules modeled after Russian nesting dolls, stratified models of our pop culture history. This is why I get so sucked in when things like DC's Rebirth go down. Yes, when painted with honesty, Rebirth is nothing more than an echoing buzzword. A propaganda ploy meant to take money out of our pockets and put issues of The Flash in our hands. It's friendly brainwashing, but it's also a complete shakeup of DC's creative teams. And that means this is a setup for what will end up being our generation's scratching on DC's stone tablets. These dudes and dudettes will be our voice. They are our comic book congressmen. They speak for us, and they will write our history. Line-wide shakeups like this are not super common, and a shakeup that is also timed with a shift in creative doctrine is unprecedented. So let's take a few minutes to break down everything DC said about Rebirth during its live stream and try to figure out what all of it means.
What is love? Baby, don't hurt me no more.
It's not a reboot. Nothing they said during the live stream that revealed Rebirth gave any indication that this is anything close to a reboot. What Rebirth is a combination of event book, new business model, and a new philosophy. Dan DiDio and Jim Lee seemed almost apologetic when they spoke about the New 52. Their hindsight seems to have christened that time as a betrayal. And Rebirth, at its core, is a line-wide refocusing of DC's long and modeled legacy. While they seem to still be building off the norms of the New 52, Rebirth sees books embracing the spirit and characters of the pre-New 52 era. An emphasis will be placed on getting back to what each character has always stood for, and future stories will focus on mining continuity and reintroducing characters that have not yet found their way into the New 52. The Rebirth event that will cross over all the books and begin with an 80-page one-shot seems to be the facilitator that will put this attitude into action. We still have no idea what that event will entail, other than it will involve the death of a character and the rebirth of an old character and secrets and twists and turns and all the expected doublespeak that goes into selling a new event book. All of these promises are really nothing more than the hanging of motivational posters, and until the books are in our hot little hands, they really aren't going to mean much. The two things about Rebirth that do have an instant concrete impact are, number one, all DC books will now cost $2.99. And number two, there will be a line-wide reorganization of creative teams, which I have already stated the importance of. Since this last point is what will ultimately define Rebirth as either a Final Crisis-like success or a Convergence-level failure, I'm going to run through some of the more interesting creative team shifts and what I think it means for the future of DC Comics. DC did a lot right with Rebirth. The only thing it got perfect was Batman. I could not be more giddy about who is writing each of these titles. Tom King taking over Batman was the worst kept secret on the internet. Mr. King has become the #1 guy in DC's farm system, and I love the balls the guy is showing by agreeing to follow what is probably the greatest creative run in the history of comic books. Being the guy after a legend is the roughest job in, well, anything. You either end up as Steve Young or as Bubby Brister, and you never want to be Bubby Brister. Said legend was rumored to be taking over Detective Comics, but that job ended up going to James Tynion IV, who is another dude that has put a lot of time into turning small titles into masterpieces and acting as a wingman on more popular stuff. Anyone that has read the Gentleman's Boom studio titles knows this guy is maybe the industry's most underhyped talent. Finding out that Tynion is finally loose in his own Batman Dream Workshop is one of the biggest fist pump surprises of the conference. The guy that was supposed to be writing Detective Comics, comic book demigod Scott Snyder, is instead going to act as a probation officer for All-Star Batman, a title that has spent the last 10-ish years in a well-earned time out. Snyder will be working with a rotating crew of artists telling in-canon stories that are going to be tonally distant from the other titles. This is perfect. They gave the most creative dude the most room to be creative. The only downside is the first artist he has to work with is JRJR, so we all have to suffer through an arc where Batman and Two-Face look like lollipop-headed toddlers. To quickly mop up the rest of the Batman titles, Tim Seeley staying on Nightwing is a boring choice, but it's the right one. A couple writers from the 100 are relaunching Birds of Prey, which is cool, but I don't really have a lot of strong feelings about that series. And my favorite passive-aggressive middle finger of the entire show came when they announced that Raphael Albuquerque will be drawing Batgirl. This cracks me up to no end because the last time this dude drew this character, it made the internet's head spin all the way around.
I'm no Superman.
All the Superman creative teams are fine, but nothing really blows my skirt up. In fact, the only feeling I have about the whole Superman lineup is that it feels very, very crowded. There's Superman, Action Comics, Supergirl, Superwoman, New Superman, Supermen, Trinity, and a couple more that I'm probably forgetting. This won't be the first time we got saturated with Super Family books, but the corrective eyewear of history is not super kind to those eras, and I would have liked to see the lineup be a bit more focused. Greg Rucka returning to Wonder Woman is just so perfect. It is right in line with everything Rebirth is supposed to stand for, being creatively bold going forward while honoring a quality lineage. I wish we had seen more moves like this. And it's not only great from a public relations standpoint either. Rucka's idea of telling two parallel stories with two different artists on a book that comes out twice a month is a brilliant cracking of the code, a studied recipe that is part Jason Aaron's early Thor stuff and part Rotworld. This will be one of my most anticipated books. Over the past, let's say 10 years, Marvel has done a much better job than DC at sitting on the big money side of the fence and sniping young talent out of the independent comics badlands. Several Rebirth moves show that DC is looking to stop that. Joshua Williamson writing The Flash is the most under-talked about move of Rebirth. He has been an insanely overlooked guy at Image, and he was a guy that looked like Marvel had the inside track on. Williamson's touch for goofy bleakness just screams DC, and bringing him on board for Rebirth was an ace move for DC's talent scouting. I love the political and existential themes that John Semper says he's placing at the core of his Cyborg run, and he has convinced me to start picking up that title for the very first time. Brian Hitch on Justice League was a safe pick, but it was probably the right one, though I wish he had been a bit bolder with his choice of roster.
Closing time, open all the doors and
I really have few complaints about Rebirth as a whole. It was exciting to see the teams revealed in such a way, the creative thesis seems sound, and everything seems focused on telling an extra crazy comic booky story. That and the whole thing just seemed really attentive to the whole company-fan relationship. However, the show did suffer from a Grant Morrison-sized hole. Considering this is the biggest move the company has made in half a decade, it was really strange to see that one of their biggest guns has so far been left sitting on his hands. Also, I found the JLA non-announcement really annoying. The whole event was great because of the conversational and transparent feel it carried. And to close on such a flirtatious yet withholding bit of non-news really left a sour taste in my mouth. They could be doing this because JLA is the long-rumored Jonathan Hickman title that Twitter has been torturing us about, and maybe they're waiting to announce that until all the boring contract and accounting stuff is figured out. It could also be that JLA is the Snyder Capullo reunion that was also absent from the Rebirth lineup. Both are boner-inducing ideas, and I can't decide which I want more. All I know is that if you're going to tease us like this, it better be something special. There are my thoughts on Rebirth. What are your thoughts? What are your most anticipated titles? What did I miss, and what do you think? Leave your thoughts in the comments below and make sure you subscribe, and I will see you next time.
I want to see like Transformers, but they're all in the shape of Michael Bay. They're just fighting each other.
The Michael Bay form. Every time they step or punch or touch anything, it explodes.
That's good shit. All right, can we get the show on the road?
Ah, fuck, I guess. What is up, nerds and nets? Welcome to an episode of Thinking and Drinking. Now, this week we're going to do things a